Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to the final 13.2 launch webinar, What's New in XAF, presented by the one and only Seth Juarez. In this session, he'll cover the creation of custom calculated fields and models, soft validation, and simplified large reports, and more. Thanks so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Seth Juarez.
Hello everybody, happy non-denominational season's greetings from us at DevExpress. Do you see how that was very non-offensive? So today we're going to talk about XAF because the majority of you, it looks like 75% of you, do not consider yourself advanced users, and in fact more than half are beginners or haven't tried it. I'm going to briefly go over what XAF is all about, and then I'm going to dive into some new features, okay? And so we'll start out by looking at the current state of software development. It feels a little bit like we might be doing it wrong, right? Something that should be easy with a tool often doesn't work. Sometimes we get tennis elbow from writing software. It feels like we're just doing it wrong, okay? Now, let's look at the obligatory architecture slide so that we can get a feeling for what it is that XAF actually does by reminding us what we do. Almost all software, point of sales type software, or just regular business software that we put out every day, consists of mainly 4 different layers-ish. The first is the UI. Then we have some logic, data access, and ultimately the database. But it feels like every time we greenfield a new project, it feels like we're writing the same code over and over again. For example, your UI is, if you're having a detailed view of your data, it's going to have a bunch of text boxes / whatever boxes to put data in. It's just components arranged in a certain way. Now, we happen to know people here at DevExpress that build components. So we have a good idea of what components you need based upon the type of data that you have. Additionally, for logic, there is certain logic that is always the same. For create, reading and updating, and deleting data, and managing the relationship between your entities and your data, it's always the same. So why are we always writing it if it's always the same? When it comes to data access, that's kind of a solved problem, more or less. For us, you can use XPO or Entity Framework 5 when it comes to XAF. I mean, it's literally writing SQL statements and pushing it back and forth from the database. And now when it comes to databases, really, a database is a database. The point of XAF is to write all of that stuff for you. XAF is a framework, and that's an important distinction, right? It's not a screen builder. Although it builds screens, it's also not a data access layer generator, right? Even though that's what it does, it can do it. But imagine it as a framework to get you started on the basic stuff that you would need in any kind of application, whether it be Windows or web. Now, obligatory architecture slide just to show you. The architecture of an XAF application follows the pattern called Model View Controller. MVC, however, was co-opted by ASP.NET. ASP.NET does not own that particular architecture, even though they call it that. This architecture was invented all the way, like I think in the 70s with Smalltalk, and it's a very good one. It allows you to separate your model, which is number 1, from your controllers, which is number 3, and then pushes it to your view. Now, the areas that I'm showing you here are the areas where you can extend XAF and change it. For example, we have built-in business classes. Like, for example, you probably have person in your particular application. We've built that already for you. Next, when it comes to controllers, there are certain things that you want to do with a person. You want to create, read, update, delete, and manage relationships. That's in the controller library. That's the green spot where number 3 is. And then the views are just the views. That's what it is. You're going to have a text box for everything or not. But now the areas of extensibility are where you can add your own things. For example, obviously in your model, you might have your own objects that you need to look at. And number two, you might want to modify the way those models are shown in the view or change the way it works in the controller. So with that in mind, let's not write software the wrong way anymore with this bull that apparently does not work. Brief overview today. We're going to do a brief foray into XAF. We're going to actually make something, if that's okay. And then I'll show you 3 new stuffs and a half. And you'll see what I mean by that at the end. We'll talk about soft validation and what that means. We'll look at custom fields, and then we'll look at reports v2. All right, let's do this. So I am going to bring over Visual Studio. It's right here. And I am going to do a brand new XAF project. If you go over to your template deal, there is a DevExpress XAF thing. There you can make a ASP.NET application, a Windows application, or you can make a cross-platform application. We'll talk about modules in a little while. But then you can also abstract away certain items that happen on the server using these other server classes. Okay, so let's call this. We're going to build a support thingy, and so we'll hit OK, and then build the project. So again, notice that there are certain projects that you need to be aware of. The first is the base module that has to do with all the functionality that you are going to put in this particular application. You can also have other modules and incorporate them. Next, we have modules that are specifically related to the UI. One has to do with the web, and one has to do with Windows. So, for example, this might be something, in essence, you don't necessarily have to even have that in this project, but it's there just to give you a sense of the architecture. But for example, in the web module, you might have a particular view that you have for a particular type of thing, which you can reuse somewhere else. And then finally, you have the actual presentation of the items. Notice that in each project, and I'll expand them all here so you can see what I'm talking about. Remember that little part where you could extend that was off to the right in that diagram? Notice that each one of these projects has this model XAF-ML thing, right? And so you can see there's one in the base module. You can see there's one in the web, in the Win, and in the other projects. Those module XAF-ML files contain changes that you make to either the UI or to fields or to pretty much whatever you want, and they are applied incrementally. So it starts at the bottom, it will apply these things, and then it will apply the ones as it goes to the top. Okay, so without further ado, let's build something. Again, we're building a contact database. And to just give you a feeling for what it is, it's just going to be a support ticket management tool. And so to do that, we're going to have to build some business objects. And so what I'll do is I'll add a new item. And that item is going to be an ORM persistent object, persistent class. So I'll call it company. Okay, so there it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the default class options. What this means is it says do the basic normal thing that you think you should do with this. Okay, and then to add fields, all we need to do is we need to use some CodeRush templates. So for example, XPS. Oh, I know why it's not working because I'm not in the class. So if you do XPS space and type in name, what it will do is it'll start to create the properties for you that you want. So there's tons of properties we can add. So I will, boom, make a bunch of stuff. So notice that all I've done is I've created a company object with a couple of things. Notice that you could just do XPS. I made a template to do it for me. So now let's do a person. So we'll do a person class here real quick. Again, I shortcutted it so you don't have to watch me type a lot. I am just building a person object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this to its own file like so. And so you can see here's an employee. Now the important thing is how do you manage relationships, right? Because notice that a company can have many employees or person. And the way you do relationships is using XPA for association. And I'm going to use company because that's the company that they belong to. And there you have it. Notice that what it's done is it's created this association using the actual company object. The association name is not important. It's only important when they become ambiguous. But now that we've made the one-side relationship, we need to go back to the company and do the multi-side. So I'll hit escape. And then we'll do XP collection, XPCL. We're going to use the employees. We're going to call it employees, and it's going to be related to person. Right? You recall that the association name is only important when it becomes ambiguous. And let's build. Good. We're good to go. So let's run it. Oh, notice that I already have a database set up. Let me go ahead and show you that that database is there, but let me delete it because I think that's the important part. I want you to show you how it will automatically create the database for you. So now notice it's empty, but also notice, let me refresh here, that we have this XAF support database with a couple of tables, right? The tables have to do with each of the entities, and then this is specific to XAF. It lets us sort of manage the modules that are in there and the types that are in there. For example, if you have inheritance, that will make a little bit of a difference. Also notice that this already had an icon. It's because I put it in there. Notice that with company, everything that you would expect to do, you can do that here. You can change stuff, etc. I'm going to hit no on saving, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the company, and I'm going to add some default stuff. Now, there are two ways to add these options. You can do it in code. I'm going to do it in code here, and I'll show you a little bit later how to do it in your model editor. So organization, and the default property is going to be name. And so now when I run it, we are going to see company, person, etc. You can start to add companies. You can start to change stuff. Now remember, I talked about the model editor. The model editor can also be accessed directly inside of the application. So for example, when I go to options, let's say for example I want to use a tabbed MDI and we want to use the Office 2013 light gray style. I'll hit save. And now look how it looks. You can also change it to ribbon, etc. I'll just leave it like that for now. But again, remember the model is what changes almost everything that goes on. Yes, some of you might be noticing a little bit of a lag between voice and video. It's that sometimes the video takes a little bit to push out, but I will watch the audience view to make sure I don't do that. In fact, let me move it closer to where I can see, because I can see what you're seeing too. Okay, so notice that we've done that there. Let's talk a little bit about the model editor so you can see it a little bit more. Notice that you have the model editor here. You have options. Remember the options that I showed you before, they're not the same as they are, for example, in the Win project, because there's more stuff to actually do. Notice that the options here include UI type, skin, and form style. Right, you can change it to ribbon or not if you like. And so you can see that here. Notice that it's a little bit different here when you're looking at the model for the agnostic area. So again, anything you apply here will be automatically applied to the other stuff over there. All right, now this, every time we do something like this, it seems like we're doing like two classes, and so I don't want to do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some more stuffs. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I am going to use some magic. Boom! Hold on, it didn't catch up yet. So there it is. Notice what I've done is I've created a series of objects that has more stuff in it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make them a little bit smaller because again, it's just exactly what you would expect, but you probably don't want me to write them in front of you because that would be boring. So now we have person, product, issue type, issue, and entry. The way it works is a person from a company creates an issue of this type, and there's many entries that go into this particular issue. The issue is related to a specific product. But now what we need to do is we need to add some associations over here to this. So we'll do some person association so that they are related to each other. So we have who created an issue, for example, who it's assigned to and what entries they've created. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to run this and show you that there's a lot more stuff going on here. But notice that this really, I don't like the way this is set up. So what I can do is I can go to the model editor either inside of Visual Studio or outside here, and let's rearrange some stuff. So let's go to the navigation items and let's go to default and let's change the caption to main, right? Because the default really doesn't work. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to order this, and I'm going to use Alt to move stuff up and down. Company definitely should be at the top, so we'll set this to 0. And person will move up like so. Product I think is kind of root-ish type. We'll do entry, and then this one's the last one, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so notice that we've changed the way this looks. And now what I can do is I can go back, and you can see that under navigation there's main, and you can see how that works. Or for example, say you want the navigation to just be a tree list, for example. Let's do that. And let's hit save and let's roll through it. So now we have this entire program that we've built. Make a new company that has employees. You can make employees, for example, and employees are going to have items that have been created by them, items that have been assigned, and entries. And then when you look at this, you're like, wait, but it's putting the object ID. We don't want that there. You can customize the layout as well. So let's take this guy out and put it into the X spot. Then we can delete this. Then when I go back, notice that we've actually changed the way the UI works. Again, you can do this either from the modules, the base module itself. You can also do it in the Win project, or you can do it as you're editing. And so again, I think it's pretty powerful. No, I don't want to save the changes because there's nothing in there. But now this program only becomes useful when we actually have some data. And so if you want to add some data, you can. There's one of two things you can do. You can make a module to add the data. I'll talk to you about that some other time. But what I'm going to do is I am going to make data from scratch. And the way I'm going to do that is I have this thing I built to, let me add an existing, right-click, add existing project. And what this project is going to do is this project it's just a project that builds data using statistics. And if you'd like to know more about it, I'm going to talk about this particular at CodeMash in January, so please come and see me. I won't spend that much time here. But I do know that we need to have a class to generate some data. I'll call it generator. And boom, we'll add some stuff to generate the stuff. There you go. So it's a little tabbed over, so forgive me for that. Let me make sure that it builds. Again, just to let you know, all this is doing is it's just generating data. Okay, that's all it's doing. Looks like, looks like I forgot to do something here. So let me do that. Very good. So let's rebuild again. Very good. So the updater works, or the generator works, and now what we'll do is we'll go to this update thing and make some data. And make sure that we have this going for us. Okay, so again, all this is supposed to do is it's supposed to make data. So again, whatever code you have to put your default data, you would put it here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. Oh, it's not going to work. Sorry, I forgot to clean. So it's going to have a Oh, I guess it is working. So while it's building some data, you can see it right here doing its thing. I'll take some questions, Amanda. Are there any questions related to what I've shown so far?
Not really. I mean,
everyone
there's
wants
this
all
question.
Okay.
Everyone's sending their features
wish
for
lists.
2014.
Oh my goodness.
But from Jennifer, maybe you can answer this. So is XAF only a develop from scratch tool, or is this something that can be used to write apps to interact with already existing massive databases? And does it work with Oracle?
Let me answer the easy one first. Oracle, absolutely. Again, because it's built on top of XPO or Entity Framework, if you so desire. What that means is that you can really map to pretty much any tool. Any database that XPO maps to. So yes. As far as brownfield applications, I will say that you can absolutely map to an existing database, and you can give it a go. But there are a lot of things that XAF does to make it a little bit easier to do it, especially if you're doing greenfield. So give it a try. I'd love to. Maybe you can send me an email and we can try it out on your database, see if it works. Okay? Because again, how you manage relationships is very important, especially with foreign key relationships, primary key, etc. And so that's the answer to that. Okay, it's done. What it's done, and I think it's important to recognize that it will only do this if it finds less than 2 companies. So let me zoom in here. So now it's never going to do it again. It only happened the first time. But now we have a whole bunch of data. So for example, here's DevExpress, and here is Jenny, who is one of our support engineers, and here is some of the issues that have been created by her. Here are some that have been assigned to her. For example, notice that the product is the Oofdufla, and there are a number of entries that have been added, and you can see how much time has been spent. Now you can see here that it uses a decimal, and so it's using this as a dollar sign, but we don't want that. So let me show you how to change that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this OID thing out because we don't want it. So we'll delete that. And now I'll go over here to the edit model. And notice that on the BO model, you have your business objects. And under entry, we have this thing called time spent. And notice you can just put N here. Just do a regular number. And there you go. Oh, wait, I got to hit save first. Save, and then we can go back. And, for some reason, it's not showing it there. And it's because I didn't edit it in the right place. Now you can also go to the views here. And you can go to the each of the views. Notice we just did the issue view or the entry lookup list view. You can change it here, detail view. And so notice that you can go through the fields or the columns, and you can change the way that these things look. Notice for some reason I left the display format on 0C. So I was in the right place, just did not change the right thing. So now I can go to N and hit save, and then now I can rerun it. And you can see that the time spent looks a little bit better here, as well as when we're going to the entries here. So you can see how much time spent is going on. All right, so notice I have a full application here that I've set up. Okay. So now that we have this, again, just if you're looking at this, don't don't read too much what's going on. What I made the computer do is I made it read War and Peace and Pride and Prejudice, and then I used a Markov model to generate text that looks like those two things. And so that's where the text is coming from. Okay, now I wanted to spend a little bit of time going into the basics of XAF. Notice we have a full application here with some data in it as well. And so now what I want to do is I want to get into the new stuff, right? You recall there was a couple of things. One is soft validation, then custom fields, and then we'll do reports v2. Okay, so let's talk about validation or just modules in general. You remember that we said that you can create specific functionality and put them inside of modules. So notice that this module file is a specific module. Notice that it has specific types that have been exported. It also has required modules. But what we've done is we've created a bunch of modules. There's also something called Expand Framework, which also has modules that are community driven that you can use. But what we want to do is we want to use the validation module, and you can see that right. Let me catch up right here. So let me drop the validation module onto the base module. Now, validation has also specific UI. And so when we go to the Win application, notice I'm going to go here and I am going to drop the validation Windows Forms module because there's certain UI that corresponds to that. Notice it automatically brings the validation module in there as well. Okay, so let me rebuild this. There are a number of ways to do the actual validation. So I'll briefly talk about, for example, I think there is a property there is an attribute required field rule, I think it's called. No, there's a specific name for it, and I'll tell you it in a second when I build it. But hold on, let me find it. Let me find it real quick because I know it's somewhere. Okay, it is the rule required field. So there's specific rules that you can have. I'll show you just the first one, right? So persistent, you got to add the field, and what you can do is you can say, this is the ID. We got to give it an ID. We got to tell it. There's tons of stuff. There's the context. There's the message template, etc. So you can actually do that in there. But the easier way is to actually do it inside of your model. So you can notice that we have a new item sort of built up in here. I'll edit it here, but notice that you can also edit it in the users, in the end user stuff. Again, a quick thing that I want to point out. Someone asked a question about this. Notice that the application has a default connection, and that's to SQL Express. Notice that what you can do is you can add your own connection right in here. So where's the? It's in here somewhere. So what you would do is you would drag it and then change the connection string properties here, if you want to point it to something other than SQL Express. Okay, back to validation. Let me go and add a new rule, and this is the required field. Let me give it a name, and let's say the company description is required. So company description required. All right. Notice that what we've also done is we've tried to be pretty explicit about what it is that you need to put in, right? And it's very clear. So the target type that we're going to be working with, let me delete it and rebuild. For some reason it didn't show up, so let me go to required field again. Let's change the target type for some reason it's not showing up here. So let me delete it here and let me run it and try it in the other area. Again, some of these things are in CTP mode and we're just showing them to you. So let me go to the validation here and let's see if we can put the rule in here. So the target type, there you go, it works there. So the target type is company. The target property is description. So let me make this a little bit bigger. And let's call this the company description required rule. And what we want to do is we want to, on the save, we want to give an error if the description is not there. So let me close this out. Let me open DevExpress. And let me take the description out and save it. Notice what happens. It says there's a problem, so I'll hit close. So we got to save it. So that's important. So let's go to Tools and let's go to Edit Module. And now let me show you what soft validation really is. Notice that there is a result type now that you can put in. Before, all you could do was prevent. But now say you just want to say, you know what? This is important, but if they really want to save it, then we'll let them. Now, when I go to description and I save, you have this validation error, but you can choose, if you want, to ignore it. And you can see that right there. So I'm going to hit ignore, and notice that it will save it, but it will leave this little OCD marker for those of you that are OCD to remind you that there is a problem. So I'll put it back in, and then I'll save it. Notice the marker is gone. Now let me show you the third level of for validation, and that's information. What I'll do is I'll change it to information. I'll go back. I'll leave it blank. I'll hit save. Notice that it will not bring up a drop-down box, or it will not bring up a box, but instead it will just say, hey, you know what? It must not be empty. Now, again, you can change exactly what that message is here. So, for example, you can do this. Is super groovy. Don't forget it. And now when I save this and go back, notice that I go to DevExpress, description. Uh-oh. Oh, look, I made a problem. You see the problem? I forgot the at the end of the angle bracket. No, we don't want to save changes. There. Made a boo-boo. Incidentally, when you make mistakes like this that cause it to not work anymore and it's not loading, let me show you where you can go to actually open it up. So let me bring this here. So here are my projects, and here's XAF support. In the bin folder, there's a debug, in the debug folder, or wherever you're running, there is this user XAF ML. Right? You see that? It has all of the changes that you've made. You can go in there and fix it in there as well. Notice that this is specific to the user or where it's being run. So now when I change it now and I change it here and then I go back and I hit save, notice that the information is there again. Okay? All right, so that is soft validation. Okay? The next thing I want to look at is this notion of, well, what did we call it? Custom fields. Now let me show you what I mean by that. Here are the issues, right? These are tickets that have been brought up for the Phil Dundouche project created by Mr. Suarez, assigned to, is this a Mr. or a Miss? I don't know because it's not in there. But for example, you can go in there and search and add new and etc. So you can see it's assigned to Mr. Gao, for example. And here's the title, here's the description. But it would be nice to know how many entries have been set up for this. But there's no field for entry number in the issue. So let's go to Tools and let's go to Edit the Model. Again, now we're looking at custom fields. And let's go over to the BO model and let's go into the issue and let's add one. So we're going to add a new member. And again, I think I can't stress how cool this is. This is not happening in your code. This is happening in the deployed application. Let's call it total entries. Total entries. And just as a reminder, let me go over here. Let's view the project because I want to show you. It's important that you see the, here's the solution explorer. Let's go over to the business object and let's go over to, let's find this would be the issue object. Remember that issues have this thing called entries. That's the name of it, right? So in the issue object, so little I issue dot entries will give you a collection of these entries. So let's go back to this thing over here. Notice we want a count of them, so we can do total entries here as the caption. The type is going to be an integer, right? Because it's the count. So we'll do int 16. And the property editor type is going to be integer. Notice that the stars are by those that are important. And now we can create an expression. Remember, the fields is called entries. And since it's an aggregate, we can say count. So I'll hit OK. And I'll hit save. Okay, so now you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, I don't see it. Well, let's add it. So let's go to Customize Layout, and let's go to Add, and now we can add total entries to the list of things that we have. I can put it here, and now we have total entries, and now you can see that the number there is 8. That's how many there are. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exactly. Someone brought up that says we're not adding a lot of stuff to XAF that you couldn't do backdoor in the sense in code. For example, you can add a total entries property to the actual issue entity, XBO entity. That's true. But again, to answer that question, you can do anything in the code because it's a framework. What we're adding here is we're adding customization that will allow you to be a better developer in the following way. Notice that these changes that I've made have nothing to do whatsoever with the code. I've made the changes inside of the application itself. And the alternative would be you would have to redeploy your application to add this field. And that's not something we want. So let's go, for example, now to the issues list, and let's add that column. So now let me go to column chooser. Let's hit add. Let's go to total entries, and let me add it as a field. So now, again, I have not written any code. I stopped writing code a long time ago, people, just FYI. Now the question is it a persistent object? Of course it is, because it's aggregated. It's aggregated from the other items. So let me demonstrate. Well, I'll demonstrate in a second, because what's happening here is I want to add these together. Let's do this. Let's do a total time thing. So let's go to Edit Model, because that would be more interesting. And let's call it total time. Notice that the type is going to be of decimal because we're going to add everything up. Let's make sure that the property editor is a decimal property, and let's make n. Let's make it n, and so it would be 0:n because we want a regular number like we had before. And let's add the expression. Remember that the field that we have is entries, and what we want to do is we want to sum the time spent. So time spent. Okay. So again, we're reaching down into the actual entries collection and adding the time spent. Boom. So let's do that. Let's hit save, and let's go back to the actual application, and let's go here and let's customize the layout. Let's add the total time. Oh, you know what? I didn't even give it a. Let me remove this. I forgot to give it a caption. Lame. So let's go to Edit Model. Let's go to total time, and let's give it a caption of total time. Okay. Now that it has a caption, it shouldn't have that ugly thing. So I'll right-click here, Customize Layout. We'll go to Add. We'll go to Total Time. I'll drop this guy. I'll I'll drop, whoops, oops. So there's total time. For some reason is closed. I'll put it down here like that. Okay. So now that we've done that, notice that we have the total time as well. Let's add that column again to this particular thing right here. So we have total entry and total time. You'll start to get a feel for what's going on. Now for what I was going to show you. Let me go ahead and add a new entry. The person that we want to do, let's say their last name starts with a D. That's the person that's creating it. The caption is this. The description is this. The entry date is today, and the total time spent was 5.75. Again, let's go back. I think I'm at that one, yeah. So yeah, about 10 or 12 yards. Notice that we have total entries 8, total time 36.75. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit save. It's been saved. And now when I refresh, notice that it's 9 and 45.25. Again, here, when I refresh, same thing over here. Okay, so that is custom fields. Okay, so great questions. A great feature, I think, for adding stuff. Okay, so those are custom fields. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to declare bankruptcy with the tabs, and let's talk about reports v2. Again, previously the way reporting works is you added the module and then reports were added on the client side. Now that still works, but imagine a scenario. Imagine the following scenario. This is a true scenario, and I'm going to tell you because it's a secret. None of your users want to write reports, FYI. What they do want to do is they want to change the particular shade of red that they're using on that report. Let's be honest, people. Everybody only wants to make changes to existing reports. Am I right? Okay. So what Reports v2 allows you to do is it allows you to design those reports at design time. And then at runtime, you can let your users change them, but with a caveat, I'll show you how. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the module thingy, and we need to add reports v2. So I'll drop that puppy right on there. And the next thing we need to do is, because it's something that we want to support in the Win application, we go over to this module thingy, and we can put the reports reports Windows Forms module v2. So I will drop that on there. So now it's ready to go. Now what I need to do is I need to go back to this guy, and I need to rebuild. Remember last time how the validation module didn't take until you compiled? Well, we need to compile to make that happen. And now what I'm going to do is, you don't need to do this, but I like doing it, and I'll show you why in a second. I'm going to have a reports folder, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to add a DevExpress item, and that's going to be a report, and we'll call it the employee report. All right, so the real question is this: where do I get my data from? Right? That's the part that did not make sense before, right? Where do I get the data from? And so this is what Reports v2 does for you. So I'm going to add a tab, and I'm going to call it Reports v2. Again, this is in preview. That's why there's no thing there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose some items from the toolbox real quick. It's thinking. There you go. So I'm going to put Reports v2. You'll see that in the namespace there are two new items that you can add. One is a collection data source, and one is a view data source. I'll talk about those each in turn. So now let's make sure we've built the collection data source maps directly to your entities. So I'll just drop this guy on. What I'll do is I'll go to the collection data source, which is already selected, and I want to select company. You're asking, well, Seth, this is a employee report. Yes, but I want to do it by company master detail. Notice that you have criteria that you can set up and modifiers, etc. So now there you go. Again, one of the beautiful things about our reporting suite is that it will respect, and this is important, it will respect your object hierarchy. And so notice that because we have these collections, you have all these other things, right? Because you have a one-to-many, and it's in there, and it's an IEnumerable, so it just works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to make this pretty. Sego UI light, and let's go up to 18 because that's what we want to do. And so now let me make this smaller so you can see. We're going to put the company name and description right over here. Uh-oh. I did not change the font like I wanted to. So Sego UI Lite. Oh, for some reason it's not taken. So what I'll do is I'll go to the oh, looks like it did take. So I'll go to name and description. It should be, there you go. Now it works. And now that I've dropped those on, I can convert these to labels. I can change the name. I can make this a little bit bigger. We'll make the description here. We'll put it here, but we don't want it to be so big. So I will go to 11. And now let's right click and let's go to the detail band. We'll bind it to reports again. This isn't a reports webinar, but so I'm going to go kind of fast just to give you a feel about how cool it is. We want first name, last name, cell phone, and birth date. Let me make sure. First name, last name, cell phone, and birth date. We'll drop it on here. Notice that the font is a little too big, so I'll go here to employees, change the font down to about 12. So there it is. And now I'm going to convert this all to labels. Move this down. Make this like this, first name, last name, birth date, bop, bop, bop. Make this a little bit bigger. So you might be asking yourself, and this is a good question, how did Seth get so good at making reports? That's a great question. It's hard to answer that. So let's go to sizing and let's make it squeeze so that it's in there. And for good measure, what I'm going to do, did we size this guy? Yes, we did to squeeze. I am going to add 2 XR. Where is this? Page info 1. Too big. So we'll change this down to about 12. So page info. So this is going to tell you the date that it was published. This report. So date, time. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add another page info right here, and we're going to make this flip over to the right. Okay, I built the report. The report is done. Now, you can't preview it quite yet because it's POCO objects, but let me show you how to actually add it. Because we have a module, because this is a module, what we need to do is extend the module a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna, man, I forgot what I called this. So incidentally, the way I've been doing these magic things, it's the Code Rush feature, and what I've done is I've created some templates. So you can see, so add rep is the one I wanted to do. These are the other ones that I had, and notice that the cool thing about these, for example, is that they allow you to add namespaces. This is where I made the mistake before. Allow you to add namespaces so that when you do put code in it, it will add everything in there for you. So that's where it's coming from. And I went in there just to remember that it was add report. Let me do this, and let me show you what's going on here and what it's doing. So notice that we have a predefined reports updater. There it is. And now what we need to do is for the reports updater, we need to add a predefined report. This happens to be employee report. There it is. Again, remember how I told you it doesn't matter where you put them? Yeah, because again, it's just going to happen like that. It's going to add it. And now what I'm going to do is give it a display name, employee report, and hit enter, and then you need to give it the base type. And what I mean by the base type is the root type. For us, it's company. Remember how it seemed kind of weird that we were doing a employee report, but we were using company as the object? It's because it's the report root. So let's go over here to the updater and let's type in reports updater and add it as part of the predefined report. All right, let's run it. Notice that now we have here to the left, we have this new reports thing. And now let me talk a little bit about why this is different. When I right click, I'm going to zoom in here real quick so you can see the options. Notice that there are certain options that are unavailable. For example, delete, edit, and show report designer. The reasons why these are not available because this is a static class that we've generated inside of our base module. So the question is, well, that's not very useful. Of course it is. Of course it is. The reason why is because you can now copy a predefined report and make changes to it. That's, I think, the impressive part. Right? Now you can change. Just like I said, people aren't really interested in. Hold on, the preview went somewhere. Don't you hate it when you don't know where the screen went to that? So, hold on. Let's go. Oh, there it is. For some reason, it's not showing up. So let me exit out of that. So again, the real thing is people are not interested in making reports. They're interested in making changes with it. So let's go here and let's go execute report. You can see that the report executes just fine. Now you notice, well, what if I want this on the next page? Again, what you can do is you can copy it and make a change there, or you can go back to the report here and you can add a page break after the band. You see that? And then now, for example, say you want these to be bold. Oops. Control B. Nope. Bold. There you go. So now you can do that as well. So the question from Jean is, can an V2 report be in place edited? The answer is no. Right? And the reason why is because it's static. But what you can do is you can copy it and you can change it there. So for example, you can go to copy predefined report and make a change there. Okay, so there you have it. Now, to finish up, let me go ahead and briefly talk about the other one. Remember, we're using a view collection source, I think it was. We're using a collection data source. Let me show you how to do one with the not view collection data source. We'll do the view data source. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the toolbox, I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to use a view data source. Okay, so now that I've dropped it on there, let's do some crazy stuff. Let's use issue here, and let's go ahead and add some properties. So for example, let's do a title, for example. And notice that you can make an expression for this. So for example, the field, there is a title. But what if you want to do something else, like entry count? What? Remember that from before? So now we can go to fields, and I can go to, there should be entries dot count. Remember we did this before? I'm on the issues, so it should work. Or I can add another one. For example, total time. I can go here, and in the expression, I can say entries dot sum of time spent, right? And hit OK. And now when I go to the field list, notice that those are the values that are available to me when I'm doing it. Let me change it to Sego UI Lite. And the title, entry count, total time, we'll just make these a little bit smaller here so that it will fit like so and like so. Let me insert a group header, and what is the title, entry count total, right click drop, Did you see what I just did there? Right click drop, it will do this, and now we have this other report that's set up. Again, to export it, we just need to go to the module here and just add a new report. Remember the type was extra report 1. This was some issue report. And the root type again was issue. Okay, let's run it. So now when I click this, you can see that you have this in there. Now again, look at this. This is blank. Why is that? Because there's no entries, right? And you can see that. So for example, this is very, very powerful, specifically when people want reports that don't quite match up to your UI. And I think that's one of the most powerful things of this particular feature. The question from Jean is, what is the improvement on subreports? Well, to be specific, now because you can do reports inside of Visual Studio, the support for subreports is a lot more powerful because it's happening in its native environment. Okay, there were some questions that I saw about our new web UI templates. So, yes, we did work on them. But we were noticing that when we're doing testing that it didn't quite work out. There were some problems, so we didn't want to put something that didn't work out. So instead, I will show you some new web UI templates. Do you see this? This is what it would look like, say, for example, for a tablet. This is optimized, again, for tablet. Here's a web UI template for, I don't remember what this is for, but, oh, yeah, it's just the tablet. So you're in department or task or whatever. Here's another version of it. So this is in regular. This is in edit mode. Here is the contact one. And here is the contact in list view that you can see. Here's tasks. Right? You see that? And so we are really working on that. It is definitely something that is in there, that is in on our radar. Okay? All right, Amanda, I think that's everything. I'd like to answer some questions. What do you got for me?
Oh, would you now?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the first one on the list is, where can I get DataWorks?
I know, right? It's fantastic. It took me a while to build. I built it for my reporting classes. I teach a reporting class here, which, by the way, is going to happen in February. I built it so that I can generate fake data that at least looks half real. That's what DataWorks is called. It's based upon my machine learning library called NewML, and I'll be giving a talk on it at CodeMash in January, so feel free to come if you can. If not, I'll probably release it then. It's not something I can release quite yet because it's heavily based upon XPO. Great question. But you can ask me for it real nicely over email. I might give it to you. Good question.
From George, what is the options menu item for underneath navigation items?
Oh, I don't know. Let's go there. I think he means on the model thingy. So here, options. I guess I don't know. Oh, options. Okay, so options is for the UI. I use it specifically for the UI. There's obviously other things, but if you're just getting started, go to the if you go to the Windows one, notice that you can set the skin type, the UI type, and the form style. You can also set whether it uses server mode, etc. It's just basic options that are available for your application. So, for example, if you're doing that, there's a special dashboard module. For example, you can enable creation, etc. There's layout manager options. How do you want to do this? And so there's tons of other stuff. So this is specific to navigation. This is specific to localization. This is for loading images that are not images that, for example, I use standard images. And so, yeah, and these are creatable items, what class they're based on, tooltips. These are the model files, and this is some of the actions that you can do. So, for example, to delete an item. You can add your own actions, and you can add your own controllers. Right? These are the controllers that come predefined, built in. For example, view controller, window controller. There's controllers for the reports. So that's what this is all about. There's tons of stuff in there. Feel free to dive in. Again, this is not a CRUD kind of like, this is not a, hey, build your app real quick. It does do that, but that's just the beginning. You can get in there and do all sorts of customizations. And the cool thing is that you can do these customizations even when the program is running. All right. Okay, next question.
From Luke, my app has many reports. How can XAF ensure consistency in header, footers, fonts, etc.?
That is a great question. Please email me. That's something I need to think about. But if you're using standard reports, what you can do is you can make your own report controls and export them into the end user designer that's displayed to your end users so that when they drop those controls on, it's specific to you. So for example, you can make a report header control, put it in the toolbox, and they can just drop that puppy right onto your report. So good question. All right.
What is with report server?
It's a fantastic tool that allows you to even forget about reportings. What I'm going to do, hopefully, is we can somehow add a way to add. Well, see, the thing about this is you could make XAF do report server stuff, but there's some customization that has to happen. You'd have to, yeah, we can talk about it later. But the report server is designed as a no-touch reporting solution that allows you to do anything you want to do with reporting, up to and including distribution of reports on a schedule. Great question.
From James, so reports editing is still only in the WinForms app?
Yes, we do not have a web report editor. That's something that I'd love to have, but it's a difficult problem, as you know. Again, one thing that's cool is next week we actually all get together. My job is to make sure everyone has enough water when they're talking. And what we do is we talk about some of the features that we want to have. This is definitely something that I would love to have, but I cannot give any promises as to when we will have it. Great question.
Will there be a generic collection source for object space? Or is there a generic collection source?
Let's see. There was something like that. There's a couple of things that I did not mention that we are going to have. Hold on. The object space now supports what's called an XP view. So you can create a data view via iObjectSpace.createDataView. But what this is, it's kind of like, I think it's just like the view that we created for the reports, same type of thing. So the problem is the object space is used to create types that XAF knows about. Right? And I think that's important. So maybe you can send me an email and we can look at that a little bit more in depth. Good question. Incidentally, we've also increased startup time by 5% in 13.2, and so we are getting a little bit faster. We've also made tons of object space improvements to speed up CRUD manipulation with large amounts of data. For example, for data import scenarios, in particular, creation and update operations are now roughly 50% faster than before, and we've done this, we've tested it, and so it depends on your application, but our tests show 50% increase. Sorry, decreased startup time, yes. Sorry, it's really early here, sorry. Any other questions?
Yes. How about the announced speed improvements regarding XPO?
Yeah, I just talked about that. The object space does tons more stuff, especially for import scenarios. It's just 50% faster. As far as XPO in general, great question. I don't know. You'd have to send me an email on that.
Seth, are you going to be able to provide your session source code? Several people have asked.
You know, I can, but I'll have to drop the DataWorks stuff if that's okay. You'll just have to type data in yourself. Good question.
What about reports bound to stored procedures from Santiago?
Great question. You can do, but again, remember, XAF actually can bind to stored procedures, but again, it needs to be an XAF object. An XAF object that it understands, right? So you can map an XPO light object, I think. I don't know. As long as XAF knows about it, you can do it. But if you're talking about generic stored procedure reports, yeah, you can totally Abso-freaking-lutely.
How to create a parameterized sub-report and call it on the main report.
Great question. That's going to take some doing, right? So I don't have time. Pretty much the way it is you would build two reports. You would drop a sub-report onto the main report, and then what you would do is you would have a before print event on the sub-report, especially if it's in a detail view, and you would pass in parameters into the sub-report so that it can render. So it's something you can do. I'm happy to show you. It's not difficult.
From Dennis, can you turn off the export to right-click option on the list view using the model editor?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a good question. I don't know. Please, if there's some. Incidentally, guys, I don't consider myself an XAF expert to say the least. I just started learning it like a couple months ago, but from what I've seen so far, it's fantastic. So there are so many features in there that I'm not even aware of. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Paul's asking me when the new web template UIs are ready. I thought I answered that one already. I cannot promise when it will be ready, but we want to do it. We do. Seriously, imagine being able to push your XAF app to an iPad. How fantastic would that be? I know. Yeah, me too. Okay.
From Ken, is the migration hard from 13.1.8 to 13.2?
Here's what I would do. Use source control first. Please use source control. I've had people call me with problems where it became apparent they didn't use source control and they couldn't go back. So use source control. Check in what you got. Upgrade. Make sure everything works. Check in again. And then you can roll back if something goes wrong. It should not be a problem, though.
For Bradley, hey Bradley, who's the best person to send suggestions to regarding solutions level, possibly managerial tools?
Bradley, I would love to see your stuff, man.
So send it to Seth.
I know. Hey, I know we just met and this is crazy, but call me maybe.
From Marco, the official release of XAF 13.2 was yesterday.
What?
Yeah. So you can download it today, or you could have downloaded it. You could take a time machine back and download it yesterday.
I think you should do the time machine thing. It's definitely a lot easier to do.
Yeah, right? Let's see. There's still questions.
Perfect.
Can the list view be templated as detail view for custom filtering from Pietro?
Good question. Again, since it's a framework, I'm always going to answer yes. How to do it, what I would do is I'd ask for an email. There might be, I'm always going to say yes, and then there might be like that one thing. It's like, hey, how do I incorporate the flux capacitor into my XAF application? Then I would be like, oh, no, that one, it's a software thing. So pretty much you can do anything. You can pretty much make your own screens if you want and put that in the Win or web module, etc. But yeah. So send me an email and I'll get you to the right people. Or again, use our fantastic support center, support.devexpress.com. Ask any question. We will answer ASAP.
From Christian, when will the dashboard system be added?
That's a really good question. You can add it right now if you want. Right? The thing that I've shown you, look, since we built those collection source and data view source, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be a hard thing to do, just thinking about it. Since it is a framework, you can do it right now. Now, how will it be supported by us? Probably not. But if you do decide to do it and you send us the code, we'll be happy to look at it. As far as officially when we're going to add dashboard, can't say. I don't know.
From Robert, on Monday, I saw that the extra grid allows for selection of items with a checkbox, allowing to select an entire group with one checkbox. I assume I can invoke this in code with XAF, but having the ability to control from the model would be awesome. Does this exist?
Absolutely. But again, you would not put this in the model. You'd put it in the controller. Right, and that would be in the Windows project. You can get access to the actual grid inside of the controller and do whatever you want. It's really that fantastic. It's a framework. So I'm just going to say yes and then tell you how. And if it doesn't work out, again, my email is dennis@devexpress.com if it doesn't work. Okay? Just be aware of that.
Oh, from Reese, we've got a comedian. How do I
Oh,
incorporate the flux capacitor into my XAF application?
that's an excellent question. It can be done. First thing you need to do is create a flux capacitor model object that's bound to XPO. Put these specific properties in there. And then if you'd like to make a custom UI, you'd build your own controller. And in the controller, you'd specify the UI that you want to show. Seriously, we're that good.
And this is our last question from James. Any chance of new front ends such as the Microsoft Modern UI? In my tests, I got XAF to run as is on 7-inch screens, but any lower than that and it fails.
Yeah. Look, between us, girls, kind of thing. I know nobody's. I know this is being recorded, and so keep it between us. There are tons of things I would love to do on the UI side with XAF, but again, it all comes down to planning and when we're going to do what and how. And so, for example, I'd love to have other kinds of UIs. Wouldn't it be great if we could ... There you go. Great question.
This is a kind of from George. What other frameworks would you compare XAF to?
That's a great question, George. I'm always going to be biased. So, for example, I don't know. There's other frameworks out there, but none as powerful, none as fantastic as this one. So I'm just saying. I don't know. I think of any rapid development tool. I'd say that if you compare XAF to others, others try to just make the program for you, right? We do that with the understanding that you need to make changes, right? The other ones just make the program, and that's not what we want, right? Great question.
All right, one more.
Okay.
I swear this is it. From
Okay.
Pavel. Do you support Linux/Mono framework for ASPX?
Linux, Amanda.
Linux,
Come
right.
on.
Sorry.
No.
It's been a long week.
And the reason why, Pavel, is because our controls make special optimizations for speed that use the Windows subsystem. Right? For example, there's something called a pinvoke. You've probably heard of it in .NET that allows you to invoke Windows functions inside of the OS. And we do that just to make stuff super, super fast. Those are not supported in the Mono project, right? Because you cannot pinvoke into a Windows subsystem that does not exist. And so there's a reason why it doesn't work currently. But the web always works on a Linux box. So make an XAF application that makes websites, and you can use IIS to show it in Linux, and it will be just fine. All right, Amanda, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for all those great questions. Again, 13.2 launched yesterday, so if you haven't already, download it now. Plus, we've been doing 13.2 webinars all week. And if you missed them, you can catch the recordings on our DevExpress YouTube channel or access them at devexpress.com/webinars. And that is it. Thank you to Seth for presenting, and thank you all for joining us. Just a reminder, when you exit this webinar, you will see a short survey. Please take a second to comment. Again, download 13.2 and let us know what you think. And thanks for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.